Calls are mounting from some for President Biden to pardon a number of Trump detractors after he pardoned his son Hunter over the weekend.
Per multiple sources, top Biden aides are in heated internal debates on whether to issue preemptive pardons for some Trump critics. Names that have been floated include Dr. Anthony Fauci, former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney, and Representative Adam Schiff.
The step could protect those individuals from being prosecuted by Trump. The Biden administration is weighing the implications of handing out so-called preemptive pardons to those who are not seeking them or erring on the side of caution, like Biden did with his son, Hunter.
One user on X saying, quote, Joe Biden's blanket pardon for his son Hunter's criminal felonies is unconstitutional, and so are the potential Biden preemptive pardons for Dr. Anthony Fauci, Adam Schiff, and Liz Cheney. The U.S. Constitution says pardons can only be used for offenses, not potential offenses. Another user on X saying, I would fully support President Biden giving blanket pardons to people like Liz Cheney, Adam Schiff, and Dr. Fauci. It's a shame that we have come to this, but Donald Trump has pledged to go after his perceived enemies, and some folks need protection. What do you think?
If they issue a preemptive pardon for Anthony Fauci, I will riot in the streets. That would be the biggest slap in the face to democracy, to accountability, and to be clear, I have never said that I want Dr. Fauci thrown in jail for advising social distancing that he just made up and admits he made up, the 6 feet, or for advising masks totally inconsistently saying they don't work, then saying get any mask, whatever, then saying actually unless it's the highest quality mask, it doesn't matter. Or lockdowns or whatever he did. His pandemic policies are policies. He should not be held criminally accountable for them. He should be held accountable in the court of public opinion. What we want to know and must investigate and should investigate is whether the research that he approved of funding, that he was the guy who signed off on doing it, even during the period of time where the Obama administration had banned it, that research that the Energy Department and the FBI thinks contributed, perhaps, to the very pandemic that Dr. Fauci was then placed in charge of fixing, it could be his fault. He could bear some culpability there. We have to do an investigation. It has to be in accordance with the rule of law. To rule that out with a preemptive pardon would be a truly despicable act, and Joe Biden should not do it. He shouldn't pardon any of these people. I don't know is Liz Cheney going to be prosecuted for something? I haven't heard any, in my secret Trump meetings, I haven't heard any talk of that.
I think the spirit of where it's coming from when I talk to my elite Democratic friends is just straight up fear. They think that the Trump Justice Department is going to come after all of them. They think that Trump is running a battering ram through all of our democratic norms. So this is all a fear-based response. We will only know during the Trump administration whether or not those fears were justified. I think these kind of preemptive pardons would be either highly unusual or maybe have never happened. Do you know? I don't think anything like that has ever.
We're getting pretty out, norms being smashed here.
Right.
Pardons for, the Richard Nixon pardon was for any crimes he may have committed. I don't remember the exact wording of it. I think it was also a time period while president, I think, is what the wording of the pardon was. So the Hunter Biden one was broader than that because it covers a wider time period and anything he might have done. He's been convicted of some things. He's just been suspected of others. To just say this guy's pardon, there isn't even a really founded accusation of a criminal matter, and we're just taking that off the table. That would be crazy. I mean, someone like Dr. Fauci perhaps should fear for good reason because he might be culpable for a policy that killed millions of people. And again, I am not casually asserting that without knowing exactly his level of responsibility. We don't know for sure that COVID did emerge from a lab. I think it's highly probable, but we don't know for sure. We don't know it was as a result of the specific proposal that they tried to fund. But I do know that, and Dr. Fauci is I've said this many times, he's the foremost public advocate of risky, high-risk research and having it done in a foreign lab under safety conditions that did not meet our standards. So we'll find out. But you're right. More broadly, this new norm of just, if Biden were to do this, just start pardoning people just in case, that seems so bad. That seems like true banana republic territory, and I think it cedes so much. It cedes the if there's any moral high ground remaining over Trump, that's the end of it.
Well, we know that certainly Trump does not have the moral high ground, and Biden obviously
neither of them
is quickly losing it. I feel more comfortable making a prediction that Trump will probably abuse the pardon power as well, and so I think part of the dynamic among Democrats right now is we know what Trump's going to do, so let's do our thing here. Again, I don't think that logic always works out well, but the difference is, as Charlemagne the God has been saying, that Democrats have put themselves on a moral high ground versus Republicans haven't always as it relates to democratic norms. Now, the other thing I think just needs to be pointed to here is you're talking about Anthony Fauci and Liz Cheney. I think in terms of Democratic strategy and messaging, and we're going to be having a longer conversation with Ro Khanna about the future of the Democratic Party, this is not how you want to be positioning the future of the Democratic Party. We want to help out Liz Cheney for anything she might do in the future and some of these other figures. I think that you want to be focusing a message on how you reconnect with working class voters, people who've been left out of the system, not people who have access to privilege and power. So this kind of messaging shows that, at least this is not all Democrats, but the few Democrats who are pushing this forward are showing they've not learned much from the results of this election. But I'm excited that we'll hear from Congressman Khanna, who I think has a different tone.
Yeah, I am too. And as we're just asserting that Trump will use and abuse the pardon process, Trump has already served a term as president. He made some controversial pardons. Paul Manafort, Steve Bannon, a distant relation in the Kushner family.
Not Charles Kushner, Jared Kushner's dad.
You can
Who did some pretty horrible
say those were bad, but he pardoned them for specific crimes they were charged with. It was narrowly about the thing they were charged with. So this is my point being, Biden has already thrown open the pardon power more broadly than Trump did during the time Trump was already president. So you could say Trump might abuse the pardon process even more, but Trump's pardons were, again, I'm not saying you can't criticize them, but they were well in keeping with the way the president tends to use the pardon power at the end of his term to pardon a couple associates convicted of financial improprieties.
I mean, Trump definitely went quite far with some of his pardons. I guess to use the Charles Kushner example, I guess we might see a future ambassador, Hunter Biden, in a future Democratic administration. If things continue to go downhill, maybe that will be a future we have. I hope it doesn't happen. But I think one interesting point that Congressman Khanna has made is that the pardon power is anachronistic. It's a remnant or influence of some of basically medieval kings. It is in the Constitution, but how it's being applied might be a bit excessive right now. I'm actually curious from your perspective, Robby, from a libertarian or constitutionalist perspective, are pardons an American idea? Is that something that presidents should have?
Look, I don't think it would be unreasonable to set some limitations on the pardon power or make it perhaps subject to congressional review. That is not crazy, but honestly, no, I wouldn't change it, because for every scumbag type person like Paul Manafort whose life is made easier by the pardon power, what about people, again, what if they do sometimes do some pardoning of nonviolent drug offenders or people I would like to see released from prison. I would like to see a pardon for Edward Snowden. I would like, Chelsea Manning's sentence got commuted and got released. I was in favor of that. I would like to see a pardon for Julian Assange. I would like to see Ross Ulbricht freed from prison. These are all controversial pardons that I want to see happen, that I know would be less likely to occur if there were additional constraints placed on it. So I would not be, for those reasons, I would not be in favor of changing it.
I think that's interesting. I think one rule I have in politics is that every action, it's like Newton's laws of physics, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And so Democrats potentially going in this direction of preemptive pardons, it reminds me of the conversation around expanding the Supreme Court. Once you let these things out of the bag, then the other side is going to do either the same thing or even worse. And so you have to be strategic about this. And from a pro-democracy standpoint, I would not do preemptive pardons.
Well, Adam Schiff, by the way, has rejected the preemptive pardon. He says he does not need one and does not want one. So I found that very interesting. Coming up next on Rising, we've got a lot more to talk about. The Pete Hegseth nomination, still a go so far. He's fighting back against those charges. We'll talk about that, and we'll be interviewing Representative Ro Khanna.